Well, Donald Trump knows he is losing. Donald Trump knows that the Democrats are going to win the congressional elections this year, and Donald Trump knows that that means a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives will very likely be forced by Donald Trump's own conduct to impeach him for a third time and to put him on trial in the United States Senate, where the Democrats could be in majority control of the Senate next year for many reasons, including that today, Democratic leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, once again forced a vote on Donald Trump's war, and every Republican senator running for re-election this year chose to vote for Donald Trump's war, including Susan Collins of Maine, who could be digging her own political grave with that vote and handing over her Republican Senate seat to the Democrats in November. And Donald Trump knows this is happening. Donald Trump knows that Democratic chairmen of congressional investigative committees next year and their highly skilled staff will work 7 days a week investigating Donald Trump's massive corruption, investigating Donald Trump's corrupt personal enrichment, using his position as president to enrich himself and his family. Donald Trump knows that those congressional investigative staff members will be working 7 days a week investigating corruption at every level of the Trump government, in every department and every cabinet secretary, including the fired cabinet secretaries. And Donald Trump just watched the voting population of Hungary rise up against the corruption of a prime minister, corruption that Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to continue. Donald Trump tried to corrupt the voters of Hungary by publicly offering them cash from the American government if they would just vote for the prime minister who it turns out they hated. Donald Trump is so afraid of becoming the next Viktor Orban, the next target of the kind of top-to-bottom corruption investigation Hungary's new prime minister is promising, that Donald Trump fears losing the congressional elections so badly that he has turned to psychiatrists for help, as he publicly admitted today in a highly edited, favorably edited, no doubt, but still incapable of suppressing the madness, highly edited interview released by the Fox propaganda channel.
When somebody gets elected president, that party always loses the midterms. I don't know why. I don't know why. Nobody can explain it. I asked people that are deep into the psychological world, I said, why is it that a voter votes for the opposite party? It's even when you have a good president.
I asked people that are deep into the psychological world. With his 80th birthday approaching, Donald Trump can no longer come close to forming a normal sentence. In a lifetime of listening to people speak English, you have never once heard someone say, I asked people that are deep into the psychological world. Psychology professionals include a range from psychologists to psychiatrists, social psychologists, and others. And social psychologists have actually done some very interesting work over the years about how voters make their choices. But I think we can just dismiss it as another Trump lie with the awkward Trump phrasing of a seemingly crumbling brain, because if Donald Trump did ever talk to people that are deep into the psychological world, he is just statistically likely to be talking to someone who thinks Donald Trump has very serious mental problems, as described in the book, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump, which was featured on this program in the first year of Donald Trump's first presidency. The book started off with 27 psychology experts who didn't get a chance to examine Donald Trump, of course, but watching him, were able to make their contributions to that book based on their expertise. And in later editions, It went up to 37 psychology professionals analyzing Donald Trump. And in his very first appearance on this program, in the second month of Donald Trump's presidency 10 years ago, former Harvard Medical School professor Dr. Lance Dotis said this.
Lying in the way that he does it, repeated, dangerous lying, makes him unfit and is a sign of serious mental disturbance. And to the extent he doesn't know reality, and I agree, by the way, I don't think he does know reality clearly. He doesn't have a clear grasp of it because he changes it. He makes up reality to suit his internal needs.
And here we are 10 years later, and it is so much worse that finally everyone else in the news media has caught up with the issue of Donald Trump's obviously crumbling mental state. And after thousands of Trump supporters attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, after Donald Trump told them to go there to fight like hell, Professor Dotis returned to this program 3 days after the January 6th attack and said this.
A delusional psychopath who has been the same his whole adult life and who we knew would get worse the more stress he was under, because that's what happens with people with this kind of severe disorder. So when Nancy Pelosi said that she was making sure that the nuclear button couldn't be pushed, that was very wise and made a lot of sense. It was not an overreaction in the slightest. And when she said he's unstable, absolutely, that is exactly the situation we're in and why he needs to be removed immediately, yesterday, really, because he is going to continue to get worse.
He is going to continue to get worse. It's 5 years ago. And now finally, everyone, and I mean everyone, from the New York Times to Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, agree that Donald Trump is much, much worse.
You can call it the Strait of Hormuz or the Hormuz Strait. I said, which is better? They said, either is okay, but you can call it either one. The only thing you can't call it is the Trump Strait. They don't like that idea.
Okay, now that is a wartime president. In the middle of the war he started, talking about what is now the central point of contention in his war, an important body of water, an important shipping channel that he apparently didn't know existed or didn't know what to call when he started his war. So he had to ask people. We heard former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's laughter on Morning Joe this week when she was talking about Donald Trump having no idea that Iran had the power to close the Strait of Hormuz before he started his war and shut down 20% of the world's oil supply, as it has done. And tonight, the Strait of Hormuz remains 90% closed, according to CNBC analysis of commercial shipping there. And Donald Trump wants to call it the Trump Strait. Why? Because it would be easier for him to remember? Just imagine Franklin Delano Roosevelt not knowing what to call the English Channel when General Dwight Eisenhower was planning the largest and what turned out to be the most successful invasion of beachheads in the history of warfare. The D-Day invasion in World War II, the turning point of that war. After that invasion was so successful, imagine President Roosevelt saying he wanted to call the English Channel the Roosevelt Channel. There would have been no smiles anywhere in the world. There would have been no defense, even as some kind of perverse, deeply sick joke. And if he said that, President Roosevelt would not have had a chance in his 1944 re-election campaign, which was quietly underway before and after the D-Day invasion. President Roosevelt went on to win his re-election that year to his fourth term before presidential term limits were amended to the Constitution. And then in the next year, Franklin Roosevelt did something that Donald Trump does not know ever happened.
Look, I ended 8 wars. A 9th is coming. But I ended 8 wars. Nobody's ever ended 1 war. Who's ended 1? Nobody.
Just when you think you might know the rough dimensions of Donald Trump's enormous ignorance, he says something like that, and you realize that he has no idea about the history